Hello everyone, our topic this week was requested by all of these lovely people. We'll be going over Fury from the Darksiders franchise.
Okay, so Fury is one of the Four Horsemen of the Charred Council. She is the Darksiders' representation of, depending upon your interpretation, either conquest or pestilence. And while the title Fury doesn't have much in common with either on the surface, they did manage to convert the scales that either conquest or pestilence are usually holding into the only set of weaponry we can imagine you can make out of them. A bladed whip. Although perhaps a set of flails would be equally comparable.
Like all of the Horsemen, Fury is one of the last of the Nephilim, the result of experimentation in mixing angelic and demonic essence. She seems to have a degree of super strength, superhuman durability, is a skilled warrior, and possesses magical talent as well. Her primary weapon is Scorn, an enchanted hilt forged by the Mad Smith, which can assume the form of whatever weapon she chooses, though she appears to favor the form of a whip. When using her Holo abilities, the Scorn shifts to different forms. A dual set of flails for the Flame Holo, a lance, it's totally a spear, for the Lightning Holo, an enormous hammer for the Force Holo, and a large sword that splits into two smaller dual blades for the Stasis Holo. Speaking of the Holos, even before Fury's game, Darksiders 3, was released, it was noted that she was something of a battle mage. Despite this, the only mystical attacks we ever really see her use come in the form of her various Holo forms, which were gifted to her by the Lord of Holos. Realistically, this is simply a game mechanics issue, as even War had a handful of spells at his disposal during his game, but it still seems odd that Fury uses little to no magic outside of the Holos themselves. Regardless of the questionable nature of her battle magery, she also possesses a super mode called Havoc Form, which grants her incredible power and survivability. See our video on the Horseman super modes here for more details.
The Nephilim rampaged across creation for an indeterminate period of time, slaughtering everything in their path until the Four Horsemen, Fury among them, elected to join the Charred Council and put a stop to their people's ways. In Darksiders 2, we're told that the Horsemen did this because they grew weary of slaughter wrought by their people. In Darksiders 3, however, Fury's game, we're told by one of the 7 deadly sins, more on them later, that Fury joined the council only to both survive and secure more power for herself. We don't actually know which of these is true, though considering the sin in question accurately cited other things about Fury's personality, the likelihood is that the truth is somewhere in between those two ideas. Either way, upon swearing fealty to the Charred Council, Fury and her brothers War, Death, and Strife rode against their people, a legion of angels at their back, and slew the Nephilim until only the 4 of them remained. The last of the Nephilim, the enforcers of balance for the Charred Council.
Fury is next seen, ever so briefly, during the events of the Abomination Vault novel. She, along with War and Strife, are present during the council meeting when Death spills the beans about the Nephilim's creation of the Grand Abominations, mystical WMDs that the Nephilim used to help them raise world after world. Only Death knew of this beforehand, the secret having been kept from the younger Nephilim, the other 3 horsemen included. But after this meeting, Fury isn't seen again. 2 things about Fury's portrayal in the book versus her game should be noted. First, Fury in the novel is a much calmer, more even-tempered creature than the Fury we see for roughly the first half of her game, wherein she is a fiery-tempered, easily provoked being. In fact, her behavior towards the end of her game, after a great deal of character growth, is much more similar to her portrayal in the book. The second thing to note is that the people behind the books and games gave themselves a clever little out for these sorts of inconsistencies, knowing that things could change as further games were developed. By stating at the beginning of the book that the events of the Abomination Vault novel occurred so long before the events of the games, that all of the Horsemen's motives, personalities, and powers may have undergone changes by the time of the games. Fury is next seen, just as briefly, in the comics, chronologically first in Death's comics and then in War's. Early on in their careers, likely even before the confrontation with the rest of the Nephilim, the Horsemen had to acquire their powerful mounts, phantom horses. The scene where they acquire them focuses mostly on Death, but the other 3 horsemen, Fury included, are there, though they just stand around talking. Sometime later, she was also present when she, Death, and Strife are sent to bring War back to the council after he'd gone a little battle crazy. In the ensuing fight, she battles War alongside her brothers and assists in restraining and literally disarming her youngest brother War. Quick side note, we know that Death is the oldest of the Horsemen and that War is the youngest, but all we know about Fury and Strife is that they are in the middle somewhere.
Which leads us to the events of Fury's game, Darksiders 3. When the story begins, Fury is powerful, angry, arrogant, and bored. So, when she's summoned by the Charred Council, she's angrily giddy to have something to do.
Please, please, please tell me you're a planet of demons that needs slaying. Or 2.
Upon arrival, she's informed that her brother War, chained at the council's feet beside her, had prematurely started the apocalypse, and that somehow in the ensuing chaos, the 7 deadly sins, whom the Four Horsemen had together subdued and captured once before, their souls were immortal, only their bodies could die, had been freed and loosed upon the already ravaged earth. To her credit, Fury does question why War would do that in the first place, but appears to think little of it, instead accepting the mission to go alone to recapture the deadly sins on the condition that, when she succeeded, she be named leader of the Horsemen, a position currently held by Death. As she leaves, Fury reluctantly accepts the oversight of a Watcher, one of the Council's minions, and War warns her that someone somewhere was working against the Four Horsemen, but she pays him little mind.
Upon arrival on Earth, Fury begins tracking down the 7 deadly sins: envy, wrath, avarice, sloth, lust, gluttony, and pride. The game allows the players a bit of leeway in what order the sins are tackled, but the fake envy always comes first, pride always comes last, and wrath has to be defeated near the end, all for mechanics reasons. The game does a fantastic job of characterizing all the sins very well, having each of them use powers related to their respective sins on Fury. We did a video on them specifically, which you can watch here. What's important to know about the deadly sins here is that because of them, with each sin confronted, Fury is forced to come face to face with and overcome that particular sin within herself during each confrontation. Some, such as the greed displayed and personified by avarice, she overcomes easily. Others, such as her lust for power, take much more of a struggle on her part. Because of these confrontations, of all of the Horsemen we, the player base, have been able to play, Fury goes through the most character growth by far, evolving from a self-centered, easily riled, arrogant power brat into a considered, wisely humble protector of mankind.
Along her journey, Fury makes contact with a handful of allies, most notably the Lord of Hollows, Usil, Ulthane, and her Watcher. The Lord of Hollows is by far Fury's greatest ally. Early on, Fury encounters the Sin of Wrath, and the two engage in battle. Partway through the fight, in order to gain the upper hand, Fury summons her phantom steed, Rampage, to aid her. To her surprise and dismay, she finds her mount and dearest companion murdered, riddled with angelic weaponry. Her distraction nearly costs her life, as Wrath used the opening it created to impale her. Fury broke Wrath's body, but he later regenerated, since Fury was in no condition to imprison him, and even if she had been, Fury was pulled by the Lord of Hollows to his domain in the aftermath of the fight. There, the two meet face to face for the first time. Over the course of the game, the Lord of Hollows would judge, test, and as the game progresses, begin to praise Fury. He begins by testing and judging Fury for her faults, and ends praising her for her growth. Along the way, he gifts Fury with 4 hollows: the Flame, Storm, Force, and Stasis hollows, each granting Fury unique powers that she can switch between at will, and each wreathing her in a magical, thematically appropriate glow. While using the Flame Hollow, Fury wields dual flails, can generate flames with numerous attacks, gains a double jump with a serious vertical lift, and can ignore the heat of magma, though fire-based attacks can still harm her. The Storm Hollow changes Fury's weapon into a spear the game likes to call a lance for some reason, allows her to generate lightning in various ways, gives her a ranged counterattack, the only form allowing her to do so, as well as the ability to float and glide using environmental cyclones. The Force Hollow has Fury conjuring a great hammer, dealing massive damage, and lets her knock back just about everything, no matter their size or abilities, as well as convert herself into some sort of minor singularity thing that either conjures or pulls in purple rock in order to roll around trails of vertical rock, as well as making her dense enough to sink underwater and not be pulled around by wind. Finally, the Stasis Hollow allows Fury to conjure one large sword that splits into 2 smaller swords, and lets her slow her opponents in various ways, as well as passively generate a field of ice, allowing her to walk on water and hop up on walls covered in a blue aura of some kind.
The Lord of Hollows tasks Fury with her one and only optional quest during her game, killing Abraxas for him. The results of this quest are up to the player, and we cover them in more detail in our video on the Lord of Hollows here, but the short version is that you can choose to kill Abraxas, the Lord of Hollows, or possibly both, and learn some things along the way. From the 2 of them, you find out that Abraxas is making the Black Tower, home to the first Darksiders game's boss, Abaddon the Destroyer, and that Abraxas works for the Destroyer. We also learn that the Lord of Hollows is a former member of the Charred Council, and that he believed the Council was derelict in its balancing duties, leaving humanity to be destroyed because they fear what humanity could one day become. If you choose to side with the Lord of Hollows, which we assume is canon because so far the do all the things available option has been the canon world state for the previous 2 games, and there is more story involved if you side with the Lord of Hollows. He finishes his project, his becoming, and in the process dies? Transforming into and gifting Fury with the mysterious stone sigil, though he is frustratingly vague as to its purpose, saying only that it should help fulfill man's potential and that he was putting his faith in Fury to carry on and protect humanity and his work.
All of those final reveals concerning the Lord of Hollows occur late in the game. Earlier in the game, Fury encounters Ulthane, a maker who has taken it upon himself to defend the remnants of humanity. He enlists a reluctant Fury's aid by offering to help improve her gear if she brings him any humans she finds, and later builds a portal for Fury that will be important later. As Fury continues her quest, she also encounters Usil, an archangel and leader of what's left of a small legion of angels. When they first meet, Fury is full of piss and vinegar, planning to slaughter every angel she can get her hands on, Usil included, for the murder of her horse Rampage. Usil counters by telling her the desperate state his people are in, and telling her that picking a fight with one of the horsemen on top of that would literally be the stupidest thing he could do. The two eventually work out an agreement to work together to stop Lust, the sin that had been plaguing Usil's people, raising their fallen as undead to fight against them. He even shows up to aid Fury during the fight with Lust, but is swayed to fight by Lust's side against Fury instead. Fury eventually forgives him, having been nearly won over by Lust's persuasion herself, and then moves on.
The game culminates in a series of boss fights and revelations. By the time that Fury reaches Pride, the last of the deadly sins still standing, she's gotten enough hints to know that someone, somewhere, has betrayed her, set her up, possibly set up her brothers as well. Upon defeating Pride, Fury questions her on the subject. Only then is it revealed that Fury's faithful watcher, always by her side, was in fact the real Envy, the first creature they fought and captured having been a fake. Envy betrays Fury, trapping Pride in Fury's place, absorbing Pride's power and the power of the other sins, before cluing Fury in on the answers to the questions she'd been asking Pride. While doing so, Envy reveals that it was the Council who had betrayed Fury. The Council had been behind everything. They had set the 7 deadly sins free. They had orchestrated Rampage's death. They decided that the Horsemen had outlived their usefulness, and had sent Fury alone in the hopes that she and the sins would kill each other. Afterward, Envy left Fury for dead and went to assault the Council directly. Fury awoke at Ulthane's place, being watched over by one of the humans she'd met before, who would eventually turn out to be her brother Strife in disguise. While disguised as a human, he helps Fury get back on her psychological feet, as she was very shaken by her defeat after the successive revelations of her character flaws while dealing with the other sins.
When she was ready, Ulthane showed her the portal he'd been making. Tuned specifically to Fury herself, it would take her wherever she wanted to go. So she set off after Envy. Arriving in the Council chambers, Fury declared war on both Envy and the Council, first defeating Envy before confronting the Charred Council. If the player sided with the Lord of Hollows, it's revealed that Fury believes that the mysterious stone sigil has the power to destroy the Council, though whether this is literal or figurative is left to interpretation. The Council seems to know what it is, and both covets and fears it, demanding Fury turn it over. When she refuses, they redouble their attacks on her. Fury eventually detonates the prison for the sins in their collective faces in order to create an opening, and then escapes back to Ulthane's place. Once there, she attempts to rally the remnants of humanity, Ulthane and his fellow makers. Convinced now of the importance of humanity and the balance of creation, and of others' work to squash them out of existence. But the Sanctuary is attacked by Abaddon the Destroyer, an attack Fury was certain was made possible thanks to information from the Charred Council, and while Strife and the Makers hold the invading demons off, Fury takes humanity through the portal Ulthane had made for her to locales unknown, presumably somewhere safe. Making Fury the first horseman to live through her game, with both War and Death dying at or near the end of theirs. At some point later, War causes the final seal of the Apocalypse to be destroyed, summoning his fellow riders, the fallen Death and Hidden Fury included. But what exactly comes next is a question that will be answered in a future game.
And that's basically Fury, Rider of the Charred Council and Guardian of Humanity. We hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave us a like, and maybe share it with someone you know might like it. If you have ideas for more videos you'd like to see in the future, do like all of these lovely people, and let us know in the comments down below. If you'd like to see more videos from us in the future, be they lore or let's play, go ahead and hit that subscribe button.
In the meantime, this has been True Masters and Morons, signing off. Thanks for watching this video. If you'd like to see more like it, hit that subscribe orb.
To see our last Let's Play, click or tap the link on the right.
For our last lore video, click the link on the left.
Thank you to all of our patrons for making these videos possible.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.